Hi, thank you so much for having me. I didn't know I was meant to be here until she said my name, so it was a bit of a surprise. I've also never been on stage with a triangle this big before, so big round of applause for the triangle. Yeah, definitely. So today I'm going to tell you the story of how I went from being a junior designer to the CEO of an international social enterprise. Now, the story is 6 years long, but I'm only going to take 20 minutes to tell it, so don't worry. It starts back in January 2012. I trained as a graphic designer at university, and I was working as a web designer, but with one key problem. I didn't know how to code. I was just making pictures of websites and sending them off to developers and not knowing what they were going to turn out like when they were up and online. I thought this was a bit of a problem, and it was like holding me back in doing my best work. So I decided that I would teach myself to code. So I scrabbled around online looking for tutorials, and I would work in my lunch break and in the evening, teaching myself, making all these websites that were a bit wonky and didn't quite work. And one of the ways that I was learning was by going to web conferences, a bit like this one. And I met a new friend at one of these web conferences, and she would turn out to be my co-founder. And we were sitting at lunch one day, and we were talking about, like, this is so cool that we get to build the web. It's so exciting. Look at all these amazing tools we have. Like, I wonder if they teach this to children, because that would be so cool. So I called my spy on the inside. I called my mum, and she is a primary school teacher in a primary school in the UK. And I asked her, do they teach kids to code, Mum? She's like, no, we don't. And they don't teach the teachers either. So, big problem. So I go back to my friend, and we're chatting away, and I'm like, well, what if we write projects for children to learn to code? Well, that's pretty easy. So at this point, I'm going to pause the story and ask you guys a couple of questions to, like, limber you up a little bit. So raise your hand if you know how to program in one programming language, and I'm going to include HTML and CSS in that. Okay, great. So could you raise your hand again if, what was my next question for my experiment? Raise your hand if you were under 16. Oh, the lights, thank you so much. If you were under 16 when you first started learning to code. Okay, and of those people, did you learn at school? And of those people, how many of you were, like, sort of introduced to it via kind of another adult, kind of not related to school, like a parent or a family member or something? Okay, cool, that's really interesting. Lights down. Thank you. So that's really interesting. So what we decided to do was that we would combine a new idea with an old idea. We thought that we would put coding into after-school clubs, which sounds like a pretty simple thing to do. And this is where we decided that we would take our chance now that it had arrived in front of us. But what would we call our new coding club, I hear you ask? Well, we decided to call it Code Club. Super imaginative. We decided to call it Code Club because we wanted to create a really cool brand that people could point to and say, I'm part of that community, I'm part of that movement. And a club is a cool thing to belong to that kids are like, oh, I really want to belong to that club, I really want to belong to that. And coding at the time was seen as, like, not cool, so we were trying to do our best to give it a bit of image revival. And this is how it would work. So a volunteer goes to their local venue, maybe it's a primary school, a public library, a community center. They take the projects that we'd written at Code Club, and with a group of 10, 15 children, they meet every week for an hour, and that's what makes a Code Club. And it was really important to us that Code Club should be free to allow as many people as possible to attend, and that it should be a fun, social club. It's not like school, this is not another class, this is meant to be like fun with code. So I made a logo, and we whipped up a one-page website, and it described the idea to people. And the idea for that website was to see if people were even interested in what we had to say. Were we just two people like crazily like typing away at this idea that nobody else cared about? Because a couple of people had told us it was a bit mad. So April the 12th, 2012 came along, and the website went live, the tweets went out, and it all started getting a bit crazy, to be honest. The next day, I got a call from the BBC asking me if I would give an interview. Now, I've never given an interview in my life at this point, but I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? So I take the call in the corridor outside on my lunch break, and they ask me, so Claire, what are you aiming to achieve with all this? What's your goal here? And I was like, we're going to be in 25% of primary schools. I was really glad that I picked a number the night before, I tell you. Now, there are 21,000 primary schools in the UK, so some quick maths will tell you that we would need to start 5,000 code clubs. I had no idea how we would do that or if that was even possible. But I just told the biggest news outlet in the UK about our plans, so I was committed. There was no going back. And that bold claim got us even more attention from the press, which was awesome. And the more people heard about Code Club, the more support they gave us. The momentum was building and building, and so we'd proven to ourselves and to other people that this was an interesting idea, and so we thought we should probably get to work. So we started writing projects with a group of volunteers. We used Scratch, HTML, CSS, and Python. And we taught children during those projects how to make games and applications and web pages. We started a pilot with 25 schools, and they were giving us feedback, telling us when something didn't quite make sense. And then later that year, we launched Code Club to the whole country and let everybody join in, and it was awesome. By December that year, 9 months after we'd launched, there were 800 code clubs around the UK, and I was freaking out. And so in many ways, I was thinking about this. Code Club didn't really act like a charity, even though that's what it was. It acted like a tech startup, and I think that's probably one of the reasons we got quite a lot of attention. So we would go to all the same tech events. We were kind of acting like a lean startup. We were using technology all the time. Our product was mainly online. And we got a lot of attention and support from big tech companies, including financial support. And when that funding came, and I became the CEO, very serious, I realized that my dream that had started 9 months ago was my full-time job. It was a bit scary. So with that funding, I started hiring a team. This is the beginning of the year, and this is the end of the year. There's a lot of interviews. And yeah, we grew to 10 people. And it's pretty crazy being responsible for 10 people when the year before I was responsible for my own rent and pairing my socks. But I learned 2 really important lessons from working with the team at Code Club about people. But unfortunately, I learned them a bit late in both cases, so it gets a bit confessional at this point, so bear with me. First of all, my co-founder and I, we started disagreeing about the direction that Code Club was taking and about who we were receiving funding from, and some really difficult conversations. And I realized that we should have spent more time in the beginning making sure that our goals for Code Club were much more closely aligned. I think as co-founders, you need to be so aligned in your vision and in your purpose, and spending time doing that at the beginning and all the way through really will save you a lot of pain later on. Now this is Laura. And not only is she great at drinking pints of beer, she's going to kill me for showing that picture, but she's also an amazing volunteer. She was the teacher at the very first primary school that Code Club opened at in London, Soho Parish. She was great. She would take our projects, she would read them through, made sure they make sense, give us loads of feedback, and she had lots of great ideas. So it seemed a really natural thing to hire her onto the team. And she had such an amazing effect on Code Club. She was brilliant to work with. And I did love going to the pub with her, that's for sure. But 2 years later, Laura called me, because it was about to be an even more difficult conversation. She said, "I'm really sorry, but I'm leaving. I'm going to be a product manager." Now, Laura had spoken to me about wanting to do this in the past, but I'd had like so much tunnel vision on what I was trying to achieve with Code Club that I hadn't really heard her properly, and I'd ignored it. And now I was paying the price big time. So that was my second lesson. When you're on a mission, unless you are all on your own, which is very unlikely, you have to take care of all the people on that mission with you. And so as a team, we decided that we'd be really explicit about that mission. We decided that it was our mission to put a code club in every community in the world to give each child the opportunity to build their ideas with code. One of the really incredible things that happened was how the whole Code Club community has taken that mission to heart, everybody trying to play their part to make it happen. We work really hard to build a very strong sense of community. We hold events up and down the country, meetups and training events, helping people become volunteers. And one of my favorite events is our birthday parties, mainly because there was cake and wine, but also because I got to speak to so many volunteers in one place and to say thank you for all their hard work that year and to celebrate everything that we'd achieved together. And so by the end of 2014, there were 2,300 code clubs in the UK, and I'm like, my head's spinning off at this point. We started to receive emails from people around the world, from outside the UK. You know how much we love those people in the UK, unfortunately. They were very welcome, and we decided that actually we would put together a program for people to try and replicate Code Club where they were in a way that was like appropriate for them. And so here we are having our monthly phone call to see how everybody's getting on and what help they need. And then each year we meet up to spend time together, learning from each other and supporting each other. And at this point, our first translations begin, and the Code Club materials are available in other languages. So by mid-2015, there are 4,000 Code Clubs around the world, and I'm getting on a lot of planes. We've got partners set up in 10 different countries, including South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, Spain, France, Ukraine. And someone said to me, "You're changing the world." They did whisper it. And I was really embarrassed because I didn't know how to take a compliment back then, but I have learnt now. And there were so many things I didn't know when I started Code Club, and I had to learn them really quickly in order to get it off the ground and get it growing as quickly as it did. So I didn't know about the governance of a non-profit. I had to learn how to raise millions of pounds, how to manage that funding, how to hire people and keep them, and how to build a community, and so much more. One of the biggest things I think I've learned is how to make an important decision. When do you listen to people who have more experience than you, and when do you go with your gut instinct, even if it means breaking convention because you just believe that what you're deciding is right? I have no good answers for that, so I could chat more about it. And then a couple of years ago, one of the biggest decisions I think I've ever had to make came into view. The opportunity for Code Club to merge with another charity, and that was the Raspberry Pi Foundation. And I don't know if you know what a Raspberry Pi is, but here it is, about 100 million times the size of what it actually is. It's a small credit card-sized computer. It costs about $35, and it's great for learning how to program, for innovation and prototyping, because it's so small, very affordable, and it's very lightweight. The Raspberry Pi Foundation have sold over 17 million Raspberry Pis, and it's the best-selling computer in British history. And more importantly, they wanted to help us. So all the funds, all the profits from the sale of Raspberry Pi computers go to the Raspberry Pi Foundation, and they use that money to fund educational programs just like Code Club. Thinking back to one of the things I learned before, I'd learnt my lesson this time. And so the CEO of the foundation and I spent a lot of time making sure that our missions and our visions for the two organizations and the joined organizations were very much aligned. We spent months talking about it, and so when the day finally came to announce it, I was really happy. On announcement day, a community member who overlaps, he was a volunteer at a code club, and he was part of the Raspberry Pi Foundation, and he said, "It feels like my two best friends just got married." And I was like, "Aww." So I was really happy. It felt like Code Club had found its natural home amongst so many allies, and I personally felt like it was great to be able to share the responsibility for this big and ever-growing beast with other very talented people. And Code Club was just 30 people when we merged with Raspberry Pi. Here are some of my new colleagues. Aren't they photogenic? And we've grown to over 100 people in that time. They're all awesome, passionate people who will also kill me for showing you these photos. And Code Club is absolutely thriving at the Raspberry Pi Foundation. Those old projects that I showed you before, we used to make those with InDesign and upload PDFs to the internet. I know, it was a total nightmare. Whereas this is now a lovely, shiny new online learning platform. You can download PDFs from it as well, which are automatically generated by magic. And so it's absolutely thriving, and so many more people are able to access these. And available in German. Hooray! This one's specially for you. So as I, at the Raspberry Pi Foundation, hired a translation manager whose job it would be to build a community of volunteer translators. And she has 400 volunteers so far, and the Code Club projects are now available in 28 different languages. So she's doing a pretty amazing job. Now, I'm told it's important to include some very sage advice during talks like this. So now seems a good time to pause and for me to talk about the 3 most important lessons that are important to me that I've learned whilst running Code Club. So the first is to be bold. And my parents always told me, you don't ask, you don't get. Don't think that applied to ice cream. They also said, get on the phone and make it happen. Now, I'm not sure where they were storing their secret supply of snappy phrases, but what they did teach me was that you need to be bold and go out and to get what you need. And I think that looking back, if I'd not made such a bold claim about 25% of schools, then Code Club probably wouldn't have grown as quickly as it did because the pressure wouldn't have been there. And the next is to take care of yourself, because changing the world can be super tiring, and burnout looms large around the corner, but also to take care of your team. That's a lesson that I learned hard with Laura, and one that I plan not to relive. And the next is to have belief in yourself, because when self-doubt rears its ugly head, the best way I've found to combat it is to look back at everything I've achieved and just believe that I will continue in the same vein and continue to achieve more. And to have belief in your idea. That's so important. I think it might be the most important one, because on a good day, belief in your idea will light you up so others can follow you. And on a bad day, it'll get you out of bed, and it'll send you to your meeting, and it will write your difficult emails for you. And a bonus one, because you're all so lovely, remember to have fun. So the kids at Code Club taught me this one. Changing the world can get very, very serious. And so you must remember to have fun along the way. Have fun with your team and with your family, and enjoy the process as much as you can. Okay, right, we're done with the sage advice now, so we can go back. Back to the story. So it's 2018. There are now 13,000 code clubs around the world in 160 different countries. And there are 15,000 volunteers around the world. So this could go horribly wrong. But who now wishes there was a code club in their school when they were a child? Bit more. Yeah, okay. All of you need to go and volunteer to start a code club. That would be great. Because there are 182,000 children at Code Club each week, and you can add to that. All those children are learning to build their ideas with code and being inspired by people just like you. And so, just like that, my dream, my initial aim had come true. There are 5,000 active Code Clubs in the UK, and obviously thousands more around the world. It's a global movement now, and it's absolutely more than I could ever possibly have dreamed of when I first started. And then one day, I got a letter from the Cabinet Office. The Cabinet Office is the office of the Prime Minister in the UK. And so when you get a letter from the Cabinet Office, it's either very, very good or very, very bad. Fortunately, mine was a good one, and I'd been nominated to become a member of the Order of the British Empire. Bit of a mouthful. But it meant that 6 months later, I was stood in the sunny courtyard outside Buckingham Palace, taking photos with my family, my husband, and my gong, which is what I call it. Oh, thanks! They were so proud, and it felt so lovely for me to be recognized for what had been a massive effort. And yeah, it was such a lovely day. So, time for one last lesson, for me at least, knowing when to let go. I've achieved my goals with Code Club, and it has everything it needs to thrive. I realized I would do it all again, despite it being a completely mad journey. And in fact, I actually wanted to do it again. But I also realized that in order to do that, I would need to make the space to invite another adventure into my life. And so 6 months ago, I left the Raspberry Pi Foundation and started looking for the next problem that I might try and help solve. Now, I don't know what it is yet. 6 months isn't that long. But I know that I love working with technology to create social impact, so I'm sure it will be something similar to that. So I'm almost done, but I just hope that listening to my story has shown you that the most unexpected of people can change the world when they see their chance and they take it. Thank you.